You started with a dream, but now it feels like the business is running you. In this deep dive, we look at what happens when your business outgrows your control and how to survive the chaos with vision and systems.
That feeling is so common for business owners, isn't it? You pour everything into this thing, this idea, nurturing it, but then it grows and suddenly the demands just, well, they pile up.
Yeah, instead of you steering, you're just reacting, trying to keep your head above water.
Exactly. You're just trying to stay afloat.
Absolutely. And the source material we're looking at today, Michael Gerber's The E-Myth Revisited, really gets right to the heart of this. He talks about something called the owner's comfort zone.
That's right. The comfort zone. Think of it as a bubble.
Okay, a bubble.
Yeah, the space where you feel completely in control. Where you can personally see and touch and feel everything that's going on.
Got it.
But the minute the business expands beyond that bubble, well, that feeling of security starts to slip.
And Gerber makes the point that this comfort zone looks really different depending on who you are or what role you're playing, right? Like the technician.
Oh, definitely. For the technician, the comfort zone is basically how much work they can personally do.
Right. Their own two hands.
Exactly. Baking the pies, fixing the cars, writing the code, whatever the core task is, it's limited by their personal output.
So super hands-on. What about the other roles he mentions? The manager.
Well, the manager's comfort zone is a bit bigger. It's about how many technicians they can genuinely supervise effectively.
Okay.
Or maybe how many departments they can keep organized.
And the entrepreneur. Their zone must be the biggest.
By far. Their comfort zone is about how many managers they can bring into the fold, engage to pursue the overall vision, build the systems, drive the growth.
Okay, so technician is small is limited to one person.
Yeah.
And if you started the business because you were a great technician, which so many people do, you're starting with the tightest boundaries.
Precisely. And then the business grows. Maybe you get lucky. Maybe the product's amazing, whatever growth happens. And boom, it pushes right past that technician-sized comfort zone.
You just can't oversee it all yourself anymore.
No way.
Which must feel, well, frankly terrifying, overwhelming.
It absolutely is. And the natural reaction, kind of a desperate one sometimes, is to retreat. You fall back on what you know best.
So if you're a technician,
yeah,
you go back to being a technician.
You got it. You stop trying to manage. You definitely stop thinking like an entrepreneur. And instead, you try to pass the buck. You delegate accountability. Gerber calls this handing things off to a Harry.
A Harry, right, that person you hire, just hoping they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So you can get back to doing the real work, or at least feel in control again.
That's the hope. But here's the snag. Harry, and the book later gives an example with an employee named Elizabeth. Harry's probably a technician too. Just like you were. Great at the task, but needs direction, needs the why, needs standards, accountability, needs to see the bigger picture.
And the owner, who's retreated back into their technician shell, isn't providing any of that.
Not at all. They're not being the manager or the entrepreneur the business now desperately needs them to be. They're not giving Harry the framework to succeed.
And that's what sends the whole thing into a tailspin.
That's Gerber's argument, yeah. This lack of structure, this abdication of the owner's new role, it creates chaos just as things are speeding up.
So you get this accelerating business, but no real steering, no structure, chaos. This is what the source calls the adolescent stage, right?
Exactly, adolescence. And Gerber says once you hit that chaotic stage, there are really only 3 ways it usually ends.
3 paths out of the chaos.
3 pretty predictable paths. Getting small again, going for broke, or adolescent survival.
Okay, let's unpack those. Path 1, getting small again. That sounds intuitive, maybe. Shrink the problem back down.
It's super common. It's that reaction to the pain, the fear, the exhaustion of just trying to keep up with uncontrolled growth. You crave that feeling of control you had way back in the beginning.
Back in infancy, when it was just you.
Back when you did everything.
So how does that look practically? Just firing people.
Yeah, pretty much. Cutting staff, slashing inventory, maybe moving to a smaller office or workshop. Putting the key tool, the machine, right next to you.
Literally going back to being the only one doing the work.
Exactly. Owner, operator, chief cook, and bottle washer all rolled into one.
Reverting to infancy.
Yeah.
But the source makes it clear this isn't a happy ending.
Not at all. Gerber says you eventually realize the tragic truth. You don't own a business anymore. You own a job.
And he calls it the worst job in the world. Why is it the worst?
Because you're trapped. You're indispensable. You can't not show up. Nothing happens. You don't get paid. You can't leave it because who else knows how? And maybe the most painful part, you can't sell it. Who buys a job only one specific person can do?
Wow, that hits hard. The story in the book about Sarah and her pie shop employee, Elizabeth, that really paints a picture of this, doesn't it?
It's such a vivid example. Sarah starts the shop, loves baking, business booms, she hires Elizabeth. Elizabeth is amazing, bakes, does books, hires people.
Becomes indispensable.
Totally. Takes on tons of responsibility. Sarah relies on her completely, puts enormous trust in her.
But Gerber suggests it was maybe blind trust.
Kind of, yeah. It's like Sarah wanted to believe Elizabeth had it all covered because it let Sarah off the hook.
Off the hook from doing the harder stuff.
The management stuff, the entrepreneurial work, defining roles, setting clear expectations, building a system that didn't depend entirely on one hero employee.
And then, bam, Elizabeth quits. Just leaves.
Out of the blue. Calls one day, says she's got another job. Gone.
Devastating for Sarah.
Absolutely. Not just the practical side who makes the pies now, but the emotional hit. This person she trusted implicitly, just gone. It forced her to see how fragile that relationship structure really was.
But the work still had to be done.
Right. So Sarah, despite the hurt and fear, goes back to baking. The people Elizabeth hired, they leave too. Their loyalty was to Elizabeth, not the business.
And Sarah found it almost a relief.
In a way, Gerber suggests it was easier to just immerse herself in the familiar work, the baking, than face the challenge of actually managing, of building something sustainable.
And she never hired anyone else after that.
Nope. Still doing it all herself.
Yeah.
Knows she can't keep it up, knows the dream is dead. It's just this endless grind, what the source calls the tyranny of routine.
Wow. The vision just evaporates, leaving only the work.
And Gerber connects this path directly to those huge small business failure stats, like over 400,000 closing each year in the U.S. He calls it where dreams go to die.
It's a bleak picture. And the key takeaway is that getting small isn't a strategy.
Not at all.
It's a reaction, driven by the owner's own limits, their resistance to changing themselves.
Exactly. The business shrinks down to match the owner's resistance to personal growth. It's limited by the owner.
Okay, heavy stuff. That's path 1, the retreat. What about path 2, going for broke? It sounds like the opposite extreme.
It is. Instead of shrinking from the chaos, the business just accelerates right into it, faster and faster, totally out of control until, boom, it self-destructs.
Like a rocket without a guidance system. We've seen that with some tech companies, right?
For sure. Gerber mentions examples like ITEL or Osborne Computer back in the day. Often high-tech, often started by a technician with a great product idea, an entrepreneurial seizure, he calls it.
So all focus on the cool product, none on the actual business structure.
Precisely. They might have huge demand, tons of buzz, but zero underlying structure to handle it.
Chaos just grows faster than sales.
Even faster, demand swamps their ability to actually deliver consistently, reliably, or support the product. Yeah. The infrastructure, the systems, they just aren't there.
And the end result is usually pretty spectacular failure.
A crash and burn. And Gerber points out that people involved often try to spin it. We were on the fast track, just bad luck, pushing the limits, basically. He says luck, speed, even amazing tech aren't enough. Someone's always luckier, faster, smarter. Without structure, it's just Russian roulette.
Okay, so we've got retreat and explosion, both pretty final. What's the third path for these adolescent businesses?
Adolescent survival. And according to Gerber, this might be the saddest one because the business doesn't die.
It survives.
It survives, but at a huge, huge cost.
What does that survival actually look like?
Well, the owner in this case is usually incredibly determined, stubborn maybe, just refuses to let the business fail, comes in every day geared up for a fight, putting out the same fires the same way over and over.
Stuck in a loop, never changing the approach.
Exactly. Trapped. Consumed by the business, consumed by the constant fear of it falling apart.
Pouring everything into it just to keep it alive.
Every last drop of energy, every resource. But it's not growth, it's not thriving, it's just hanging on, endurance.
And the ultimate price isn't the business collapsing, but the owner.
That's it. Gerber says, your business doesn't explode. You do. Burnout.
Okay.
Complete burnout.
He compares it to an engine, right?
Yeah, like a big 12-cylinder engine trying to run on only one cylinder. You're trying to get this huge output from a tiny fraction of the needed energy and parts. Eventually, there's just nothing left. You're spent.
And the source makes the observation that this state infancy and this adolescent struggle, including survival mode, that's actually the norm for most small businesses.
Sadly, yes. He calls it a state of rampant confusion and wasted spirits.
Okay, so facing these paths, getting small, going for broke, survival burnout, it all sounds pretty grim.
Yeah.
But the source says it didn't have to be this way.
That's the crucial message. There is a better way. A mature company is different. It operates differently because it was started differently.
Oh, so.
It's founded not just on a cool idea, but on a broader entrepreneurial perspective, with real intention right from the beginning.
Meaning the owner's job is different from day one.
Totally different. In a mature company, the owner's main job isn't just doing the work or even just managing the people doing the work. It's preparing themselves and the business for growth, building the foundation, the structure, the systems before the weight comes. So when growth hits, the business can actually handle it without collapsing into chaos.
So it's about anticipating growth, not just reacting when it swamps you.
Exactly. You can't know everything that's coming, of course not. But you can anticipate the kinds of things growth demands: more people, different skills, more money, more space.
Right.
Thinking about those benchmarks, preparing for them, that's the real work of the entrepreneur.
And how do you do that effectively? Gerber says the owner needs to actually dictate the growth rate.
Yeah, this is where the vision and the planning become absolutely critical. You don't just cross your fingers and hope for growth. You decide.
Decide what?
How fast you want to grow, where you're actually going, what the business needs to look like at stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, defining key processes, outcomes, market position.
Asking those big picture strategic questions.
That's it. Where do we want to be in 5 years, 10 years? What capital, people, tech, space do we need when we hit X milestone, Y milestone? You might get the details wrong. But just the act of thinking it through, planning it out, makes a world of difference.
And Gerber really hammers the point that any plan is better than no plan.
100%. Even an imperfect plan provides direction. And crucially, he says, you got to write it down.
Write it down. Why?
To make it real, to clarify it for yourself, and just as importantly, so other people can understand it, buy into it, help build it. He mentions how few small business owners actually have their vision or plan documented anywhere.
They're just winging it.
A lot of the time, yeah. But the process of defining the future, writing it down, it starts to shape reality. Your vision starts interacting with the world. You're creating something new.
And that intentional process is the sign of a mature company.
That's the hallmark. Built on vision, designed from the outset to work as a system that ideally functions whether you, the owner, are physically there or not.
So built to work without you, not because of you.
That's the fundamental shift. It's the opposite of the adolescent company, where everything is reactive, left to chance, totally dependent on the owner's constant firefighting.
Thinking about building a business that works without you, that brings us right back to Sarah and Elizabeth.
Oh, yeah.
That whole situation was a textbook example of an adolescent business struggling because it wasn't built with that foresight, that system thinking.
Absolutely. And it leads to that question owners always ask when things go wrong with an employee. What do I do about Elizabeth or Bob or Maria, whoever it is?
Focusing on the specific person, looking for a quick fix for that one relationship.
Right. Like there's some magic key if only they could find the right person or fix that person. But Gerber says, nope, that's not it.
There's no magic in play.
No single person is the solution to a systemic problem. He says the real question isn't, what do I do about this Elizabeth? It's what do I do about all the Elizabeths in my future?
So it's about the system for handling all employees, not just fixing the one who left.
Exactly. It's about building the structure for future relationships. The source makes a distinction between Sarah's kind of blind trust, based on hope, maybe avoidance of the hard work,
Right.
and true trust, which comes from actually knowing and understanding, knowing what people do, what they know, what they want, who they are within defined roles and expectations.
Sarah didn't really participate in structuring that relationship properly. She abdicated.
She did. She treated Elizabeth like a super technician, but expected her to magically be a manager and entrepreneur without giving her the framework or authority. That weak structure was almost bound to break.
So the pain wasn't really about Elizabeth leaving, but about the faulty foundation.
Largely, yes. And the way forward isn't trying to fix that past incident. It's building a robust framework, clear rules, expectations, accountability for all employee relationships moving forward. A system designed to work.
Okay, so when we look at those three adolescent paths,
Yeah.
getting small, going for broke, survival, and contrast them with this path to maturity, It really lays out a clear choice, doesn't it?
It's a fundamental fork in the road for any owner facing these growth pains. Stay reactive, stay trapped by your comfort zone, head towards one of those painful outcomes, or choose the path of maturity, consciously.
And that path means building with intention. That entrepreneurial mindset, preparing yourself, preparing the business for growth, planning, anticipating, creating that vision.
And building a system designed to work without being totally dependent on you or any single Harry or Elizabeth.
It's a huge perspective shift, isn't it? From being the star player to being the architect of the whole stadium.
That's a great way to put it. You shift from doing the work to building the system that does the work.
And the source is pretty clear that the tragedy of those adolescent businesses, it was often preventable.
Yeah, by starting differently or by choosing to rebuild with that mature perspective. But it requires change.
Personal change from the owner, that's key. Getting new skills, new understanding, maybe even new wisdom.
Absolutely. The chaos of growth forces you to confront your own limitations. It's actually an opportunity. You can shrink back.
And end up on one of those three paths.
Or you can choose to grow through it, to transform yourself as you transform the business.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought for you, the listener. Given that building a truly thriving, mature business demands that you transform, that you grow beyond your current comfort zone, what aspects of yourself might be holding your business back right now?
Or, maybe put more simply, your future lies in maturity. Are you ready for the transformation it requires?